Welcome to Peter and Ruffy's Sports Week here on STV. The main talking points on tonight's programme. Joey Barton apologises for his bust-up but questions the decision to ban him from training. Brendan Rodgers says there will be no leftover from the Barcelona defeat when they head up to Inverness on Sunday. And St Johnstone boss Tommy Wright says Hearts players deserve their reputation for diving. We'll discuss these points as well as look ahead to a cracking night of boxing coming up on STV Glasgow and STV Edinburgh, and I'll be speaking to boxing promoter Ian McLeod. Alan Ruff is alongside me, Peter Martin. I'm delighted that Des McKeown is our guest on the programme tonight to talk football, a little bit of tennis thrown in there, the Olympics too, and the aforementioned boxing. So, Ruffy, our exclusive story. I broke the story yesterday, and as soon as I went to press send, I thought this will just go absolutely crazy in a couple of seconds from now, and it did. Joey Barton sent home from training on Tuesday, a bus stop which involved obviously Andy Halliday, maybe a few other words were spoken from other players, and Mark Warburton as well. So Joey Barton subsequently since then has apologised and then gone on TalkSport Radio to take it a stage further as well. This is, of course, his initial apology as our story gathered pace throughout the day. And Joey has mentioned, obviously, after the Old Firm game on Saturday, everybody was hurting, and in training on Tuesday, there was full and frank discussion about the result and reasons for our loss. I, like everyone else, care deeply about the task at hand, which is to restore Rangers Football Club to the top of Scottish football. The discussion we had involved some sharp disagreement about the game, and some harsh words were said. There were only words involved in the disagreement, nothing else. Nevertheless, some of the words used did overstep the mark. As someone who communicates directly, I accept that some of the things I said were inappropriate, and for that I apologise unreservedly. I cannot, however, apologise for caring deeply about winning and for wanting to perform better myself and for Rangers to do much better. The manager felt that my words were inappropriate and asked that I take some time out to reflect on what was said. He judged that it was best if I didn't report for training again until Monday. Whilst I don't feel that this was necessary, I fully respect the manager's decision. I regret what happened, and on Monday I will report for training and will do what it takes to help the team draw a line under it so that we can get back to the task at hand. I want Rangers to win. This is all I care about, and my overriding intention is to give my all every day in order to help Rangers do just that. I hope this message clarifies the situation and puts to bed all other speculation and nonsense. Rangers need to get back to winning football matches. This is the most important thing for me now. I'm wondering what the suggestion of all other speculation and nonsense on this. It's a bust-up. It happens. As Mark Schwarzer mentioned to me this morning, Ruffy, I wonder if, it's just the bus stop. I think it's a culmination and a build-up to this.
Well, first of all, we're not privy to what happened in the dressing room, and he keeps talking about words. We don't know what words we're using, the tone of the words, how it was put across. But as Des will tell you, when you have a clear-the-air meeting in a footballing dressing room, there's always somebody got something to say. And it's unfortunate if it's just one person that's got something to say and he's actually pointing out other people in the team. It just doesn't go down well. So you possibly would have had to been there to see the extent of it. I would move it on a bit to the manager. If he's had words with the manager, and the words again, we don't know what they are, but if they were as strong as what he's saying, I think the manager's got every right to. And to ban him for 4 or 5 days leads me to believe that it is a lot worse than what's been put out there in that statement. I think it's there are a lot of managers who, when players react to that kind of thing, and just dismiss them completely. So I don't think we've heard the end of this. I think on Monday there'll be a decision whether he's got a future there or not.
Yeah, I would suggest to you, Des, that this is just a culmination of a series of events. Off the back of the build-up to the Old Firm game, which again, since Joey Barton's arrival, he said he's a player that should be one of the best players in the country. the evidence hasn't been there so far. He then had a pop at Scott Brown on the radio station again by saying that he's not in his league. That certainly wasn't in evidence at 12 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. And there are other issues which I think will rear their ugly head.
Yeah, I would have to say, Peter, that if this is an isolated incident, then it needs to be some vociferous comment for Mark Warburton to send Joey Barton away from the club until Monday. My information is that it's not the first time there have been words, and it's not the first time that Joey Barton has in some way, shape or form put across his opinion, which has been detrimental to others. Ruffy will tell you, I was in dressing rooms where there was stand-up fights. Players weren't asked to stay away for 3 and 4 days.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that that's the right thing to do. However, if it was an isolated incident, as I say, then I don't think the result would have been that Mark Warburton would have asked Joey Barton to stay away. It would need to be something really, really serious if it's the first time something's happened for him to do that. I think, as I said, it's a culmination. You've used the word culmination. I think this is the straw that broke the camel's back. Understanding is that, as we're aware from his public persona, he's not short of an opinion, and I think he's given plenty of opinion in the dressing room, and also on a number of occasions I'm told that he has effectively interrupted the flow of the manager's comments to put in his own bit, which, if a manager worth his salt is going to allow to happen, they're not going to allow it to happen indefinitely. They've got to make a stance at some point, and I think this is a stance.
Well, here's my point on it, Ruffy. I've got no problem with Joey Barton mouthing off, against other players and having that air of a confidence, almost like a Zlatan Ibrahimovic. The difference is you have to be able to back it up by leading by example. That's fine blowing off against everybody if you're playing out of your skin and you are by far and away the best player in the team. Nobody's seen evidence of that. The Rangers fans want to see him do his talking on the pitch.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know the guy at all. I would think he probably thinks he is doing well. No, he's that kind of guy. You know, if you looked at him in the game on certain occasions when things weren't going right, he was the kind of player who's looking around at other players and saying, this isn't my fault, this is your fault, sort it out, sort of a thing. And when you get that kind of player in the dressing room, it's not a good scenario. You know, it's an ill feeling where if somebody picks you out individually and embarrasses you in front of the rest of your teammates, then it's not good. It's not a good training ground. It's not a good training ground to be in. It's not a good dressing room when you got somebody like that going about the place. And 9 times out of 10, if the manager's strong enough, I think they can do what they want to do without Joey Barton. So I would just let him go. I mean, it's part and parcel. It's the record that he's got. It's nothing that we didn't see coming.
I think his career's punctuated with these kind of bust-ups, Peter. Even not on the pitch or not even involved with players within his dressing room. He had an absolutely incredible bust-up with Dietmar Hamann from Liverpool. Open forum on Twitter, and it was incredible what was going back and forward there. So he's clearly an individual who has got a big opinion of himself, and that isn't necessarily a bad thing. But as you say, you've got to back it up on the pitch. Yeah. And he's not done that yet.
One of the things, I'm going to cut him a bit of slack here, but quickly on the point of, one of the things that he said a couple of years ago was that he'd been to an Old Firm game, the standard was atrocious in Scottish football. I think he'd absolutely, given Scottish football an absolute doing as far as the perception of it and the reality. I've got no problem with the fact that the majority of English people look on Scottish football with disdain. It's different when you actually come up here and you think you are Dan the man, as they say in Glasgow, and if you can't back it up, that's where the problems start. One thing I would say is I don't think they should cut him away from the side, Ruffy, because these things happen. Everybody deserves that second chance. I think personally, unless in the background they've already gone through the process of discipline and disciplinary action that would cut the umbilical cord here, I think they should give him a chance and say, okay, listen, a wee bit of humility, get back in there among the boys and get out on the pitch and show us what you can do.
Well, as I touched on earlier, that's up to the strength of the manager. The manager has to make this decisions. He's brought a lot of young players in there. All these young players would have been in that dressing room. If he's actually shown no respect at all to the managers that's there just now, there is only one option. Why persevere with somebody, it's got a track record and you're just going to wait until it happens again? Rangers don't need to be derailed after that 5-1 defeat at the weekend. They need to be going that way rather than being in amongst the press for all the wrong reasons again.
So, in one word, you say get rid of him?
Yeah.
Well, I say don't. Where are you?
Well, can I just add a bit to that?
No, you can't add any bit. No, you're going to fudge the issue. Just yes or no?
No, I think you keep him.
Yeah, so do I. Okay. Isn't it? Ruffy's raging, by the way, but I don't care. If you're going to offer an opinion, offer it. Don't try and fudge it, and he's got the fudge there. Yeah. Welcome back to Peter and Ruffy's Sports Week, and Alan Ruff is still here with us. Amazingly, there's been a bus stop in the break, but he's decided to stay with us, Des, which amazes me. He wanted to get you a few points in, but Ruffy, at the end of the day, I think all will become apparent on Monday. I do think that Joey Barton's career, if he has one, has already been predetermined. If not today, then certainly over the weekend, Des.
Yep, I think Mark Warburton will certainly be considering what the right thing to do with Joey Barton is. And between the two parties, Joey Barton and Mark Warburton, they've got to come to some agreement that allows everything within the text of Joey Barton's statement is about Rangers being back where Rangers should be and winning games for Rangers. Mark Warburton and Joey Barton need to come to some impasse. They've got to have some sort of agreement that they're going to move forward in a particular manner to allow that to happen, because fundamentally, if there's something festering in the background, like there is with Ruffy not getting his point in before the break there, in fact, we've just been handed a statement, obviously after the bus stop on Friday. If it's festering in the background, nobody wins out of that.
Okay, Rangers at home to Ross County, and I don't know if you noticed, but Ruffy still can't get that point in. He's desperate to get it in.
I tweeted, but I took it off.
Okay, you're in trouble, Megan. Okay, let's move on if we can. Barcelona was a humbling experience, according to the Celtic manager Brendan Rodgers. He's got to try and let the players put that to the back of their minds and concentrate on a journey up to Inverness. They're not in great form, Inverness, but as ever, Celtic's certainly not going to treat them with any disrespect or indeed treat them lightly on the park. Richie Forn trying to get things right up there at the Tulloch Stadium. That's on the Sunday. But he doesn't think there will be a leftover feeling from it. And why would there be?
No, I would fully expect Celtic to want to come back into Scottish football and put that to bed. You know, it was a horrible experience for the Celtic players and for the manager, and they've got a chance, you know, to get back on it on Sunday. And I fully expect that Brendan Rodgers and his players go to Inverness and win the game, because it was a terrible, terrible night for the club. But you've got to temper that with Barcelona were just in a different world, you know. As much as 7-0 in any game is a horrible result, it's you've got to sometimes just take it and move on and try and learn from it as best they can, and I'm sure that will be the message from Brendan to the players. Yeah,
no surprise, Ruffy, Lee Griffiths not being risked, just not quite ready yet, but I think he's making sure that he is in cotton wool ready for that Manchester City game.
Yeah, I think we all know how important he is, you know, and if he comes back 100%, then Celtic get the benefit of it. Obviously, as Des has touched on, Inverness should be a win. It should be 3 points, but they've went up to Inverness before and stumbled on numerous occasions. I think it's up to the manager to do what he has been doing regularly now, assessing the players, because there will be players who will be affected by that 7-0, maybe possibly the younger players. But I think Celtic have got enough players in the squad for him to shuffle it a bit about. But he'll make that decision. Obviously, they've been training since they got back home, and the guys have got their heads up a wee bit, determined to play, and the manager will have to make that decision who plays and who doesn't.
I also found it a strange decision that Brendan Rodgers changed to a 5 at the back, Peter, after, you know, they don't actually quite understand his logic in that, and I'm sure he'll go back to the 4-3-3 that has been very successful for him thus far. But I just thought that was a strange decision as well.
You thought it was a strange decision to go 5 at the back against Barcelona?
Yes.
I was hoping that before the game the UEFA
10.
thing would go 7 or 8. Because they were magnificent.
No,
I don't think... well, let me tell you this. Scott Sinclair said after the game, it didn't matter about the system. They were man for man way above what Celtic were.
Absolutely.
They were absolutely the brilliant players. And at one point, I think, and if there's a learning curve for any team and any manager and coach, Des, they were taking the ball in with 3 and 4 players around them, Des.
I get all that, Peter, but see when you've been working with a system
Yes.
and getting results, to then change it, because ordinarily you would go to a 3 at the back when you're playing against 2 strikers.
Yeah, but can I ask you this?
The interplay between Barcelona, I think, and listen, Brendan Rodgers is a far better qualified coach and manager than I'll ever be, clearly. However, I just thought you're surrendering a lot of possession in front of your back 5.
Yeah, but that's on the basis that you think that a manager is set in his ways. He's obviously got plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D.
My point is, I couldn't see the reason for going to a 5.
Yeah.
Because you're not playing against 2 central strikers, you're playing against 3 that move all the time. And actually, if you look at some of the goals, it's played in between full back and right centre back or left centre back.
Yeah.
Full backs, because they think they've got an extra central defender, don't tune in to do the job the same way as they do if they know it's a flat back 4.
Well,
I just thought it was a strange decision.
I didn't think any system would have worked against them, Ruffy, on the basis of this. As Des pointed it out there, the full-backs were bombing on down left and right. They were absolutely magnificent. And in some cases, they would make a 60-yard run to bomb on. They looked as if they were staying in their position, then they would come in. Then you had the 3 amigos, the trident, and then you had running midfielders over and above them. So if Suarez went in an offside position, he would wander back, and all of a sudden someone else would make the run from midfield, and suddenly he's onside in behind the back 5. Yeah. I just thought it was a joy. I mean, we're not going to see that on Sunday, but I think from a personal point of view, I've looked at Gordon Strachan on the end of a hammering in the early part of his managerial career. Neil Lennon, same situation. There's a tremendous learning curve for the young players. At this level, I don't think they'll get as big a spanking off Manchester City after witnessing that game against Barcelona.
No, I don't think they will. They'll move on, and they'll possibly go to Inverness and get a win there, and then you move on to the next game, and that'll become in the back burner. But it's a lasting memory as an individual of how torrid a night that was. And as I said, some people can recover for that, and some people might dwell on it for 2 or 3 weeks. And that's the way the football is. I would go the exact opposite. I would have had 5 in front of the back 4. I would have denied them the area that they were having.
Well, listen, if we start to dissect it and suggest what Brendan Rodgers should have done, Brendan Rodgers will have a tea right now and just throw the slipper at the television and say, "Calm your jets." If there's a learning curve for them, we're about to find out on match day 2 of the Champions League. So they're up in Inverness on the Sunday. The chasing pack, interestingly enough, has a team which I think this season, I think they could be the real contenders for second place. I suggested they would finish in the top 3 last season. I think Hearts, there's something about them, Des, with Connor Salmon already saying Tony Watt can shine for Scotland, and Hearts want to extend his deal to a permanent one at Tynecastle.
Yeah, listen, I'm fairly close to a lot of things that go on at Hearts, and I can't speak highly enough of what Robbie Neilson has achieved there, as much as he's had some criticism from some of the Hearts fans.
Yeah.
I think he's piecing together a terrific squad there, and I think Tony Watt is a young man that hasn't had these troubles to seek, but he seems to have spoke to him in the summer, and he was really just looking forward to getting a base and to try and play consistently and to get a run of games. I think Blackburn got an injury and that paid to that. But Hearts is a place where, you know, cracking atmosphere, good squad of players, and he's now, you know, he's scored, and Robbie Nielsen talking so highly of him, that can only be a positive for Tony Watt and for Hearts. So yeah, I think Hearts will be a major contender for best of the rest.
If he can keep it up, Ruffy, it'll be well worthy of a permanent deal. I think he'd jump at it as well, because I think he's looking for a base to finally call home.
Yeah, well, we had Paul Lambert in, and Paul was telling us, you know, but he's one of these players that's difficult to soak everything in when you tell him something. But I think as the years go by, you would think he would gain the experience, you know, to start listening to people in the know and just, this is what you're doing, this is what you're good at. And I think getting called up to the Scotland squad must eventually, you know, spark something in there that I've got a future in the game that I've not really taken to the full potential. You know, and he's now been given a chance, and what I've seen him so far up here, I've been impressed. I just think he needs, all right, he scored against Partick Thistle, but I think he needs another couple, and I think he could be up in the 15, 20 a year.
Yeah, and Tommy Wright has certainly lit the touch paper ahead of the game. He thinks that, you know, this is a Hearts side that maximise any contact when they get to the penalty box. It's a lovely way of saying, you know, they make sure they go down to win a penalty, Des.
Yep, there's been a bit of criticism at a number of Hearts players to that end, Peter. Listen, that's probably a bit of kidology, a bit of psychology from Tommy Wright towards the referee.
Yes.
You know, kind of making sure that the referee's aware of his sentiments on it. Listen, Tommy Wright will not be complaining if there's a St Johnstone player goes down and wins a penalty and eventually gets the points in the game. That's just unfortunately one of the modern parts of the game.
Yep, absolutely. Let's not forget, hypocrisy is a noble art and something we embrace in the game of football. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Peter and Ruffy's Sports Week. Alan Ruff and Des McKeown are with me here in the studio. Don't forget to join us tomorrow, 2 o'clock on STV Glasgow, STV Edinburgh. 4 hours where we'll keep you up to date with all the latest action across all 4 divisions in Scotland and, of course, the Barclays Premier League in England as well. Latest scores, interviews, reaction to the goals as they go in the company of Gordon Smith, Murdo MacLeod and Ruffy, of course. The games that are coming up in the Premiership, let's have a look. Rangers, of course, at home to Ross County with a chance to put the 5-1 defeat to Celtic behind them. And it's Kilmarnock against Partick Thistle. Partick Thistle have added Thorsten Stuckman on a contract until January, an experienced goalkeeper. Also, it's Motherwell against Hamilton in a Lanarkshire derby, where Des McKeown will be there for us, and St Johnstone against Hearts. Dundee against Aberdeen is on the Sunday, with Inverness Cally Thistle against Celtic. And of course, Aberdeen are keen to try and get Niall McGinn on an extended contract as well, Ruffy.
Yeah, and I think Niall McGinn's a big player for them. Unfortunately, he's not hit the heady heights of the year when he was scoring 23 and 24 goals, which was really, really crucial, but he's still a big player. But I think it's the young players that Aberdeen should be looking at, the Pollets and the Jacks, who need to move up a bit, you know, and if they could get them back to the form that they're on, they could get back to where they are. But this is a big game for them against Dundee. Dundee have got a reasonable record against them, but they need to start winning games.
Yeah, don't want to pick on you too much there, but if you want them to look at the Pollets of the world, is it get rid of Niall McGinn? I just want to
need them back playing.
All right, I just want to see if you're still in that mode.
No.
You seem to want to get rid of everybody.
No, I don't think they need to. Obviously, they're injured just now, but they need to get them progressing. They were pushing to get into that Scotland squad, and that sort of fell away a wee bit. They need to get back to where they were.
Niall McGinn, I wouldn't be too concerned with Niall McGinn not scoring, 18, 20 goals, whatever, Des, because his role's changed since they brought in, Adam Rooney is up there as well as Stockman, who's come in as well. They've added him.
Yeah, the boy Wes Burns as well.
Yeah, Wes Burns. So they've got
Bristol
options.
City. They have got options. I think Niall McGinn does a terrific job for Derek McInnes and indeed Michael O'Neill took part in the European Championships. And he'll chip in with some goals, but I think his main part in the team is to assist the likes of Adam Ray with chances, and he puts in a power of work. I think he would appear to be the type of player that you know what you're going to get every week. And if he can chip in with a few goals, then even better. But I can understand why Aberdeen would want to extend his contract.
Yeah, apologies to all the Stockley family. Jayden Stockley, his name was at the tip of my tongue there, but pronunciation there just completely and utterly blown it. But he is an option, and they've changed the way they play. McGinn usually comes in off the left anyway. But well worthy of a contract when you consider, Ruffy, what he achieved at the championships in the summer with Northern Ireland.
No, he's a player you wouldn't want to let go. You have to protect these players, and you've seen a lot of players now, and just touching on Partick Thistle are actively getting players on 3-year contracts, and I think if you look about the Motherwells, is it Johnsons, that's not happening. There's a sort of a short term there, so people like Niall McGinn you would want to be about for 3 years, and sometimes when you get signing a player like that who commits himself to that kind of contract, others follow suit, and that can only be a good thing for the club.
Okay, let's have a look at the Championship and the fixtures on offer tomorrow. It's Dumbarton against St Mirren, Hibernian against Ayr, Morton against Dunfermline, Queen of the South against Raith Rovers, and Falkirk against Dundee United is the 5:15 kick-off. And I must thank, and I can't remember his name, the gentleman who tweeted, and I said, well, there's only one game of the day, but there's two in contention, which is up there with many a commentator's nightmare. Neil Lennon has said that there's no way Hibs can coast through all these games all the way to the end of the season. I think he's reacting to the feeling that Hibs are indeed going to run away with it. I think he's contesting that viewpoint from many people, including myself, Ruffy.
Well, if you can believe that you've got a squad of players that can do that, I always feel it doesn't matter what team you're playing for, there's always a wee bit in the season where you go through a wee sticky period. It just depends on how long that sticky period lasts. We saw Aberdeen, who were contenders all the way through and then never won a game for about 4 or 5 games, which finally put the nail in them. So I think Hibs will hit a tricky spell, particularly with Falkirk, Dundee United, these teams who will be trying to get promoted as well. I think they'll give Hibs a game, particularly when Hibs are away from home.
Absolutely, and I think Queen of the South as well are worthy, I've mentioned there as well, Peter. Terrific job that Gavin Skelton and Big Jimmy Thompson have done there. They're sitting second. Play Raith Rovers tomorrow, but it'll also be interesting to see. I know Leanne Dempster's spoken about, and there's no need to sell Jason Cummins, but if Jason Cummins continues to score goals, you can absolutely put your bottom dollar on someone from England trying to tempt him away from Easter Road in January, and that might be the pivotal point, although there are other players there. But certainly Jason Cummins, in the 2 games that I saw them earlier on, first 2 games against Falkirk and against Dunfermline, he was the difference, and Hibs picked up 6 points on the back of him being the difference.
It makes it easier for them to sell him if they are streets ahead. If it comes to January, if it comes to the end of January and they are 14 points clear, I think the supporters would accept if a reasonable bid come in and the promotion was near enough guaranteed, then that might be the time to let them go.
I think the interesting bit in the Championship, the St Mirren, sitting bottom of the division, just staggering. But that shows you how competitive that division is. There isn't a given within that entire fixture list. There's nobody there that you can absolutely say that's 3 points. And Alec and Davy Farrell, Alec Ray and Davy Farrell are finding that out. They added a few players in the summer, but they just haven't got going yet. And tomorrow, difficult game against Dumbarton again. Yeah,
if I'm honest with you, maybe added players in, but not the quality that they were hoping to recruit. No disrespect to the players that are there at the moment. I'll tell you one story that caught my eye, which I quite like, from Neil Lennon. He's banned mobile phones from the training ground, Ruffy. I think that's a great move. He said he wants the players to concentrate on talking to each other, building up that camaraderie. There is a generation now who basically, if they've not got their headphones on, which precludes them from talking to anybody, they've got their nose in their phone.
Yeah, I think it's a smart idea. He's got a lot of young players in there, and you've already touched on how important it is to have the phone stuck to their hand. for 3 or 4 hours a day, and there's nothing worse than sitting in a dressing room when somebody's trying to put a point over and 5 or 6 phones go off. I don't think he'd be too happy with that either. But I think it's, if the players know exactly the rules and the regulations, what's going to happen, then they just abide with it. I mean, it's only for about 2 hours.
Was there any crazy rules in your day, Ruffy, that you just could not tolerate? You couldn't believe that the manager had come in and said, look, there's a ban on this?
No, I remember when Tommy Craig came to Hibs, and Des had maybe experienced this as well. Tommy was up for putting signs on the wall, and there were signs everywhere. Don't walk in here. Don't touch that. Don't go in this dressing room. Don't do this. Yeah. It was just baffling, just walking about, seeing all these signs that were on the wall. So if you're not used to it, the rules and the regulations, it is a strange one.
Yeah, Des?
Listen, I don't know if, certainly by the time I had stopped playing, mobile phones weren't quite an issue.
Yeah.
But no, I think it was pretty much, just do the job on the pitch, put it all into your training, and everybody's happy. If you don't do that, whether it's you're being sidetracked by your mobile phone or sidetracked by other issues, it just doesn't work.
Yep, absolutely. I'll never forget Ruffy getting a 2-week ban at Partick Thistle for in the dressing room. Anyway,
the mine used to ring during the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's look at the League One on offer tomorrow for us. And again, League One and League Two are going to be incredibly tight this season. Airdrieonians against East Fife, Livingston, Brechin, Queen's Park against Alloa should be a tasty one. Stenhousemuir, Peterhead, and Stranraer against Albion Rovers. What about League Two? We will be keeping you up to date on League Two as well. When the goals hit the back of the net, Arbroath against Annan, Cowdenbeath against Berwick, Edinburgh City against Montrose, Elgin Clyde, and Forfar against Stirling Albion. Of course, Elgin City finally get that point that they were craving. Possibly they'll be hoping to try and now notch up a victory and get 3 points. It certainly would be a bonus for them. But I mentioned that they're all going to be tight. Queen's Park Alloa is one that I'm going to be keeping my eye on, Des, in League One.
Yeah, I think everyone was surprised last week when Alloa lost at Livingston, perhaps other than those in the Livingston dressing room. Alloa, I think it was 10 straight victories. They then lose. We'll see how they react to going to Hampden. Gus McPherson, friend of the show, and really organised individual. So he'll have a game plan for Queen's Park to execute tomorrow to try and win the points.
Okay, we're going to have a quick break, and then in the final section we're going to be speaking to boxing promoter Ian McLeod. The St Andrews Sporting Club is getting ready for fight nights at the end of the month. We'll get Ian's thoughts on the boxers, and we'll also look at the Paralympics in Rio. Some splendid achievements. We'll discuss that, and tennis as well. It's all coming up next. Welcome back to Peter and Ruffy's Sports Week. Every Friday, the extended programme, and we try to discuss other sports as well in the last quarter of the programme. I'm going to just touch on women's football. Scotland's women's national coach, Anna Senial, does a magnificent job, Ruffy, and I'm looking at Finland, Russia and Italy. If they fail to win their qualifiers, then Scotland will be heading to their first major finals. I think it's a magnificent achievement if you can pull it off before obviously having to go to Iceland.
Yeah, they've only lost one game, which is fantastic. I think the national team has grown because of obviously the club side, their experiences in European football. I think the players now, as we spoke on another occasion, are scattered all over the world. We've got now players playing at highest level in other countries, and surely we only can get the benefit of that.
Yep, I think, to be honest with you, Des, maybe not in our lifetime. I hate to sound so morbid about it, but I'm almost certain that there will be parity at some point in the future with wages, with the levels, because slowly but surely women's football is getting more and more popular.
Yeah, I don't doubt that, Peter, that over the years there will be certainly a closing of the divisions in terms of levels of pay, levels of exposure on the media outlets, and qualifying for major championships can only help that from a Scottish perspective. And in terms of Anna Senior's role, you know, she's been in a position for quite a few years now, but gradually each championship they're getting closer and closer, and if she could actually get us on to the finals stage, that would be terrific.
Yeah, it's getting to the point where I think Gemma Fay might end up with about 200 caps, Ruffy, if they qualify for the major finals. This is getting ridiculous.
Yeah, it certainly is, and there's not only her, but there's others, you know, are way above the 100 caps as well now. But it just shows you they've been the mainstay of the national side, and if they can bring all the youngsters, the interest in the youngsters to that level, it'd be fantastic. But I agree with Des, you know, you need to be at the final of these big tournaments to progress.
Yep, absolutely. We wish all the girls and, of course, the manager of the Scotland team, Anna Senior, all the very best. Fingers crossed that this all works out in our favour. The tremendous spotlight on women's football if it does indeed happen. And in fact, it might be an excuse for the entire Tartan Army to go, let's decamp to the tournament because we haven't been there that long. We'll use the women's game as an excuse to go on holiday, and who would begrudge them that? Okay, let's move on to the major tournament that's taking place at the moment. Before I talk about an individual sport that I was watching last night, is there as much of a focus on the Paralympics this time around, Des, in your mind, as even from a personal point of view, the way it was in London? I thought there was a greater focus on the Paralympics when it was in London. I'm not so sure it's been given as much coverage this time around. I might be wrong.
Certainly my perception would be that there has not been, Peter, and I think that's probably down to the fact that while it was in London 2012, you know, the country was still celebrating sport. I think after the Olympics in the summer in Rio, the Paralympics have almost just been tagged on at the back of it. I don't mean that in a disrespectful manner, I just think that's been the perception, and yet the performance of Team GB has been absolutely remarkable. So unfortunately, again, my perception, it's probably not been given enough exposure for the reward that they've given the country. I mean, they've broken all records, which is sensational. Yeah,
I think 50 golds already, Ruffy, is no mean feat, and as every minute passes, another one could be added. But one of the things that caught my eye was, of course, the tennis last night. The doubles final was absolutely fantastic. I mean, it was one of those things where you're sitting there and you've got your evening planned out, and then suddenly I started watching. I'm saying to myself, Gordon Reid, Alfie Hewitt, you know, this could be a gold medal here. They were playing Stefan Uday, and I think the other guy's name, Nicholas Peffer, who were the number one seeds. But the pace of it, the quality on offer, it was sensational.
Yeah, I don't think you would appreciate how difficult that is. You know, it is difficult to play tennis at the best of the time, to be in a wheelchair and to have to manoeuvre the wheelchair and concentrate and playing your shots, and the speed that they move at, as you've just touched on just now, takes hours and hours and hours of training, and all credit to not only them but everybody in every other sport. It's just inspiring to watch any sport that's on it. Yeah,
the downside of it, I think, in the aftermath of the Olympics in Rio will be, I think, poor attendances, and I look at the categories because there seems to have been a fair bit of focus on, you know, individuals getting into sports and whether they have the right impairment in some way to compete on a level playing field with other people in that category, and I think that's been the hotbed of contention.
Well, I think there's been plenty of chat around that, Peter, to suggest that they need to have clearer lines of definition, which, how they actually do that, I have no idea. But I also think that the attendances are an issue. And as I said earlier on, Ruffy used the right word. These athletes are inspirational for them, for these guys to go out and be able to perform to the levels they have, to show the same dedication, if not more, than many of the biggest stars in the world is just incredible for, you know, such a, or what would appear to be a smaller amount of gain. I just think inspirational is the word.
The other thing as well is it's a shame they don't get the same rewards as the big one.
Yeah.
You know, the money that is getting thrown about to these people, you know, that I'm not saying it should be an equal amount, but they should be given something.
Yeah, okay. Thanks to Des for joining us here in the studio. And of course, Ruffy and myself will be on tomorrow at 2 o'clock, giving you 4 hours of football coverage in STV Glasgow and STV Edinburgh. We're not leaving you just now. We're moving on to another sport. And another man who came into the studios earlier to chat to us about boxing, of course, September 29th, will be back on the fight night scene here in Scotland with some top drawer boxing for you. Hopefully you're going to join us on the night. I'll be alongside Ian McLeod, but I caught up with him earlier to get a little insight into some very special fights that I would advise you not to miss. Special night at the St Andrews Boxing Club. What can the fans look forward to?
Well, again, championship boxing back at St Andrews. It's been a number of years since we've had a big fight like this. Mikey Till, undefeated, fighting against Dale Evans in the final eliminator for the British title, welterweight title, and it's going to be right 50-50. Don't know how you put your money on, and I think it's going to be a treat for the fans on the night.
Yeah, boxing fanatics will love Towell. What is so special about him?
Yeah, he's just a character through and through, outside the ring. But inside the ring, he's a demon. You know, seek and destroy, action-packed. You know, you're not going to want to go for a cup of tea in between rounds. It's going to be a great fight.
Yeah, the only thing that worries me about it, usually when you and I are standing next to each other ringside, we're praying for a good 5 or 6 rounds, maybe even 10 or 12 in some cases, but not with this guy.
No, it's a 12-round fight, but I think, you know, it's one of the ones I think certainly somebody's always going to go, and there's going to be a stoppage in this fight. I don't see it going to the 12 rounds. These two fighters, they only go forward and they throw punches and bunches with a lot of power. So I'm looking for an exciting fight.
Yeah, and of course the other great thing about it, apart from the joy of the television focusing on these fighters, there's going to be a crowd there as well that want to see it. They'll create a superb atmosphere for our fight night.
Yeah, it's an Andrews Sporting Club. It's got a great history through the years, 43 years history there. Just ardent boxing fans. So again, to bring us back to St Andrews, it's going to be a treat for the members there on the night.
Yeah, there's a top billing. That fight we're looking forward to. What else can they see on that card?
Yeah, we've got some great up-and-coming prospects in undercard. Grant Quigley, Greenock based. Again, a bit like Mikey Till, just goes in there and got a great boxing brain, but very attack-minded. And again, I think we're in for an explosive contest.
Yeah, the good thing about it, and I think this is what we all want to see in boxing, Ian, is, you know, you've got Charlie Flynn, what he did in the Commonwealth Games. You know, you're looking at what it did for the whole city. You know, you've got Towell from Dundee, you've just mentioned there Greenock. Those fans will be into it, but it's good to actually maybe raise the profile of boxing again, because it is a sport that can be hugely popular when you think of the history of Scottish boxers that we've had.
Yeah, and I think the fact that St Andrews Sporting Club are partnering up with STV for this event, and it's great for the local fighters to be out there on terrestrial television, and the prospects that we've got on undercard, it gives them a platform that they wouldn't generally have, you know, fighting in the smaller shows. So this is a massive platform for them.
Okay, you'll be dressed up, you'll be hair gelled, looking absolutely magnificent on the night. Tell us what's going to happen, where they can get it.
They can go online to www.standrewsportingclub.com and you'll get all the information with regards to tickets and timings for the event.
Brilliant. Okay, we're looking forward to it because STV Fight Night is indeed back. Join us if you can. 29th of September for a couple of hours of some blistering boxing action. Don't miss it.